I don't know that I've ever asked either of you this question. It is sincerely probably the biggest fight my wife and I have had since we got married. All right. Are you both familiar with Kraft Blue Box mac and cheese?
Of course.
Like typical Kraft.
Yeah,
what they call Kraft dinner in Canada.
Okay, yeah, traditional blue box, no like SpongeBob shapes or anything like that. So you make a box of that, you dump the powder in, you get all the clumps out. It's good to go. You put it in a bowl. What utensil do you grab for?
Fork.
Spoon.
Spoon.
It's 100% spoon, Max.
Yeah, totally.
I will always go to a spoon if I can. I typically don't love eating with forks. I love eating with a spoon though.
I like spoons because it's a vehicle that gets more food in my mouth sooner.
Yes.
Okay, I disagree. I use a teaspoon instead of a tablespoon because I want it to last longer.
Interesting.
Like I am so disappointed if I make myself a whole box and then, I need at least like 15 minutes to savor it with the small spoon.
No. Get it in there.
Yep.
Just
big spoon. Big spoon. Just go for it.
Hey everyone, it's Andrew. Welcome back to This Week at Notarize. And so this week at Notarize, and really every week for a while now, we're hiring. And we're hiring in a really big way. So we have almost 20 jobs up on our careers page right now. If you were to visit notarize.com/careers, we've added about 20 team members in the first 6 weeks of this year, which is really great. We've grown the company almost 100% in terms of company ranks since the start of last year. And now that we're a remote first company, there's really never been a better time for folks to join our team and be part of something that we all believe is really special. So in that vein, I wanted to bring on the two people most responsible for all of the great talent we have here at Notarize. So first is our senior talent acquisition partner, Dana Dimodica. We're also joined today by our talent acquisition manager and author of Let's All Find Awesome Jobs, actual information for how to get a job from someone who has at least a clue how it works. Your friend and mine, Kevin Vanek.
Hey everybody.
Welcome,
Happy to be here. Thanks
for joining me today. So what does hiring and recruiting look like to both of you, specifically in 2021? Like how has it changed for us as a company as we've moved from, having an office in Boston and trying to keep people in Boston to this remote first approach? And how have you maybe seen how it changes or impacts people who come in and try to have conversations about what they can bring to Notarize or what they're looking for?
I think it is so cool. This is an opportunity to find so much more talent than we've ever had access to before. Obviously, geographic constraints were always a factor when we were a Boston-based company, and I wasn't even a part of the team when we were a Boston-based company. So it's really just an opportunity for us to find more talent and hopefully bring on, more people with diverse backgrounds and diverse experiences to continue to build Notarize and make it an even better place than it is today.
Notarize is lucky in that we were pretty distributed before the pandemic started. Like we have always had a Boston headquarters and sort of like a little bit of a core identity as a Boston startup, but we had offices in Virginia and Dallas. We have always had some fully distributed teams like customer support and even engineering to a certain extent. Like we've always had people in multiple time zones. So last year when the pandemic was on the horizon, we had a day, it was actually March 11th, I think was the last day in the office. And we sent everybody home and said, let's see what breaks. And nothing broke. So everybody stayed home. And that was kind of it. And so a lot of it hasn't really changed, in terms of our identity. It's been great to kind of let go of the identity as a Boston-based company and just fully commit to remote. It's really opened up a lot of channels for us for hiring. It really enables us to have a broader field to look through for talented individuals who are excited about the mission the things that we're doing here. And so in terms of the changes, in terms of what's been different, it's been interesting to kind of think about what I guess this is sort of a way into a culture conversation, but I get asked a lot how would you describe the culture of Notarize? And that's a complicated question for a lot of different reasons. But one of the things that I realized early on in the pandemic is that when I talk about what culture means to me at Notarize, I was really talking about like what it's like in the Boston office, which isn't like necessarily like a company culture thing. It's more just like, you know, here are the fun things that I liked about kind of being in the office, and here's what it was like on a kind of like day-to-day level, like with those people in that office. So very like in the early pandemic, like there was kind of like a worry, like we're going to lose that like friend stuff. We're going to lose those social interactions. So we need to schedule more Zoom meetings so we can like hang out and like play video games and like, you know, do stuff that we used to do. And that was hard. And it didn't really, it kind of like created different problems because of, you know, Zoom fatigue and, you know, just being tired. So it's been interesting, like as a company to kind of like see the conversation about who we are as a company, defined in a pretty typical way about, you know, like, you know, lunches together and, you know, fun hangouts after work and that kind of stuff, kind of shift to more of a conversation about how do we as an organization take up less space in people's lives? Like, what are the guardrails that we can set up so that when 5 o'clock comes, you don't have to think about this. You don't have to worry about Slack messages and things blowing up late at night. And you can kind of have a better set of controls around like what you're responsible for. Because, you know, you think about like those times that we used to spend in the office, like it was a lot of social activity like baked into it, which is great and very rewarding. And like, I miss it, but that doesn't mean that like an 8-hour day in the office is the same as an 8-hour day in front of your computer, in your bedroom, in your house all day. So it's been neat to kind of like think about like what meetings are really necessary, like what emails and meetings, and how do we communicate like more effectively, and how do we make sure that people have the space to step away like when they really need it in order to be more effective at work and feel like we are not asking so much of them all the time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, in having conversations with people that we're interviewing or interested in hiring, culture comes up a lot, right? Like culture means something to a lot of people. They want to feel like they can be part of something, you know, either outside of what they are at home, or, you know, it can continue kind of their ambitions or interests in the workplace. And I've experienced the exact same thing as you, which is people ask me about culture and I turn to those social interactions that we had at the office. It was like, oh yeah, like people play Super Smash Bros, you know, every afternoon, and like we do lunch on Friday, and usually we do drinks on Friday afternoon. And, you know, it's all these like almost like reciprocal actions, right? Like it is culture as I perceived it was defined by like the value add given to me. When now we think about what notarized culture is, and it's so much more, I want to say like nebulous. It doesn't actually have the shape that I think that I thought it did when we were in the office, but that I think is better because it allows people to find the culture, the elements of our culture that they are most interested in and want to kind of sink their teeth into, or at least that's how I perceive it.
Yeah, I think it can be scary for a company to not have like a very easily identifiable set of buzzwords that they use to define their culture. I like that sort of like that nebulousness, that sense of flux, that sense of like kind of like evolution that is happening with our culture, because I think it's more honest.
Yeah, Dana, and I know that you joined after we left the Boston office due to COVID. Does that kind of fall in line with how you've conceptualized or articulate what the culture is inside of Notarize?
Yeah, so I definitely think I have a different perspective because I was not in person at the Notarize office. But again, like Kevin was saying, I think it's really cool to strip away kind of the gimmicky pieces of culture, especially like at tech companies. There are these kind of flashy things that they do to become more competitive from a culture standpoint. But when candidates specifically ask me about culture, what I interpret that as is people asking about who works at Notarize, who makes up the team, like what kind of people, what kind of collaboration do they do? So I'm always talking about the folks that I work with, the interactions that I have, and kind of how I feel that the team is composed. And again, that is going to be kind of this amorphous thing because every time we hire someone, the team shifts a little bit and dynamics change. So I think it's cool. It's constantly evolving, but at the end of the day, I think like culture is really about the type of people that you're hiring and kind of what value they are bringing to the collective unit.
Yeah, and in the spirit of that, I would love to hear from both of you about the idea of culture fit, right? Like people who come into interviews or even companies that look for candidates who fit the culture that exists. And I know that Kevin, you have some very strong, and I think, but echo the sentiments that a lot of us have about what culture fit is and what it should actually be conveyed as, or the things that we should actually be looking for as a company.
Yeah, you're not allowed to use culture fit at Notarize. I doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person, but it means that you are thinking about the wrong things as a hiring manager or as somebody who's interviewing people at Notarize. A, because like we said, a lot of culture means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. B, because when you hear companies talking about culture fit, what you're talking about is them wanting a certain type of person who fits and looks and acts a certain type of way. And it is often used to hide some pretty racist, some potentially pretty misogynistic as well, kind of like attitudes about hiring and kind of like who they want the makeup of their company to be. We like to think about culture add, right? Like how are they going to be kind of additive to the culture? How are they going to make Notarize a better place, a more successful place, a more interesting place to work? Which can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but it's a more kind of like open-ended way to think about, more open-ended, more honest way to think about like how are we evolving as an organization, and what are the things that are great about Notarize, and what are the things about Notarize that are still aspirational, that we're still trying to get better at. And like that kind of mentality, that's sort of like, what can I do? How can I help? Like, what can I like make better for not just me, not just my team, but for the people around me and for my customers, and everything that we're doing as a business. Like that sort of like fix it mentality. Like, what can I make better? Like when I leave my work today, when I like go back to like the other parts of my life, like what did I leave in a better place than I found it? That's like a really just kind of like a cool indicator that someone has a lot to add to Notarize.
Sure. Is that one of the easiest ways that someone who's interested in us or a position can do to like catch your eye or make an interview go really well? It's just to like, if they're interested, like perhaps they should maybe show some of that interest.
Yeah, I think, in initial screens, like energy is everything. I am not an expert in solutions engineering or in product management. So I'm just kind of this first conversation to gauge how excited are you about your work in general, about what you've done, about what we're doing at Notarize and kind of our potential. So I can get a feel for someone's genuine interest and excitement and energy within the first like 5 minutes of speaking with someone. So that's a really good indicator that I want them to meet more of the team right away.
In terms of catching our eye, like I think real engagement in what we're doing, like people who've like clearly like I talked to somebody who like just this morning who like referenced our most recent like This Week at Notarize video, like that just went up, like I was like, oh my gosh, you already watched that one with Larry? Like they were like telling me like how much like they liked the things that he was saying, and like obviously I remember that stuck with me. That was like a huge thing. Like I really like when people like have dug around a little bit and are clearly trying to like figure out who we are and what we're about. Those are fun conversations to have. It's not just about like, them selling themselves or me selling the opportunity, but like we're having a real conversation about like, what's real and what's true and what are we working on and that kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff I love to see.
Yeah, so that's it for this week at Notarize. Dana, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today. And everyone, you can find Let's All Find Awesome Jobs on Amazon. Support your local Kevin today. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
And visit notarize.com/careers if you want to find out about our open opportunities.
And visit notarize.com/careers if you want to find out about our open opportunities. Thanks for keeping me honest, Kev.
No problem.